We're back, baby. It's the charity shop at your free throws because they're free. And the Horns Up Talkin Texas podcast. Fisher, DJ Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. We're combining it all into one today. And normally we wouldn't talk anything but our Texas Longhorns, but we do have a game 7 tonight. Houston versus Texas. It is the Texas Bowl to see who goes to the World Series in the American League. The Texas Rangers go into the Houston Astros home. They beat them 9-2. Adolis Garcia. Boo Birds are out. It does not matter. He hits the game. It's the game sealing Sia pack your bags slam that he hit last night and emphatically did so. He's been killing it this playoffs. And we have a game 7. We have Christian Javier, who had a very up and down season for the Houston Astros, but he's coming in, and like he was last playoffs, he's been pretty phenomenal in the playoffs thus far. And you have Max Scherzer, who's got the name recognition, but he was bad in his first start back, and he's been injured, and that was his only game in the playoffs. I know where your heart is, because for your parlay of the Phillies to win and the Texas Rangers to win, you need the Rangers to win tonight. But what are you thinking in the ALCS game 7?
I think you just got to ride with hot and kind of what the trend shows. The Rangers are 7-0 in road games in the postseason. And, they had a really emphatic win last night, as you mentioned, 9-2, probably could have been even, a bigger margin than that. Kyle Tucker robbed a home run in the 9th inning. So, the bats are hot, obviously. And so I think the ball is in Houston's court. Haven't been able to get it done at home this whole series. So it can go any way. I know Houston right now is the favorite when it comes to betting, but not by a large margin. So I'm going to roll with the Texas Rangers. I think, Bruce Bochy is one of those managers that really gets the most out of his team. And in a game 7, he's been there before. I think they're going to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I saw a hilarious meme that was basically like Nathan Eovaldi coming out of the tunnel to pitch in game 7. It was like Bill Belichick, like the meme where he's just like
running out.
Exactly. He's like nothing on his face, just dead stone cold. Yeah. I mean, the Texas Rangers, like the Houston Astros, when they get hot, and they got hot last night. Their lineup is just as good and just dangerous. And the Astros, obviously, they took the lead first. And they struck first, and they thought, "Oh no, this is going to be a long game. They're gonna be popping champagne at the end of this one." But right. Jonah Heim, Mitch Garver took control, and that was it. And the Rangers never looked back. I think the Phillies get it done. I think Aaron Nola on the bump tonight. Wheeler, Nola, Ranger Suarez, it's been killing it for the Philadelphia Phillies. They're a juggernaut. They're at home against the Diamondbacks, and Merrill Kelly's been good, but I think the Phillies get it done. It's going to be a really, really interesting game. Is what version of Christian Javier do we get? I think that's what it comes down to. Like, Mad Max is not going to be any worse than he was last time.
Right.
Like, he's not going to blow up for 6. He's not going to do a Clayton Kershaw 0.1 inning 6 earned runs. That's just not Scherzer. You could get a 4 inning 3 earned run game. You get a 3 2/3 3-run game from him. Or if you're Max, this is it. Like, this is why you acquired Max Scherzer for this moment. It's literally this moment. He may not be at full health, but if he comes in and he's Max Scherzer, he goes 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 1 earned run, 7 Ks, and he's really dealing out there. Like, I really think the Texas Rangers can take this one home. It's truthfully anyone's game. And I would probably ride with the Rangers, considering they got it done last night and they have the momentum going into a game 7.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, watching Bryce Harper stone cold stare down Kevin Durant and Devin Booker after he hits a big home run, watching them, sitting front row is an awesome moment. And, I've been harping on this, no pun intended, about the playoffs all postseason, that ESPN wrote an article ranking him the 40th best player in the postseason. And it's so funny because he is making them eat their words, and he's been nothing short of electric. So I do think the Phillies get it done too. Didn't expect this series really to go past 6 games, let alone 5 games. I thought this was going to be like a 4-1, maybe even like just a clean sweep by the Phillies. But the Diamondbacks definitely showed a lot of fight. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to ride what my heart says, and I put down the exact bet for the Phillies and the Rangers to meet in the World Series, and they're both 1 win away. So I got to ride the wave.
Got to ride the wave. You got to ride. Are you going to hedge it or not? You're just going full out.
I mean, how could you hedge it? Because if one of them makes and the other one doesn't, you still lose the bet.
You still lose the bet. I mean, I guess the only somewhat palpable hedge would be
just picking all three of the matchups. I mean, I guess the palpable hedge would be Houston and Philly.
Yeah, that would probably be you parlay Houston and Philly tonight, or you parlay
But
Arizona.
I would also lose if Arizona actually made it. So
yeah, I think the
there's
Diamondbacks.
no hedging.
Yeah,
no hedging.
There's no real hedging. All right. Well, speaking of hedging, if you bet on the Longhorns to win it all, there's some serious hurdles to overcome and some serious hedging that you can't do because it's a long-term bet. Our Texas Longhorns head to Houston. We were up 21-0 on the Cougars, and yet we barely escaped this one. They score 21 unanswered to answer back, and we lose our starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers, 2 to 4 weeks. He'll be out. We'll be riding Malik Murphy or the prince that was promised in Arch Manning. What's your biggest takeaway? Maybe a positive that you saw, and then we'll get into a negative a pop.
I mean, the offense, that's a positive for me that they started out really hot. It's the most points I think we scored in the first quarter all season long, and it looks really good, but they slowed down. It's basically the opposite of what we had all season long, and the offense is going to look a little different next week without Quinn Ewers. But I like that you're getting A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy both in the mix early. A.D. Mitchell only had that one catch for a touchdown, but at the end of the day, you're spreading the ball out and you're getting the ball to your playmakers early and exposing the defense. I was a little concerned with our defense, throughout the game, just being able to create pressure. I kind of just feel like our D-line, is getting to the quarterback. But I think a lot of the times, especially with athletic quarterbacks, they're overcommitting and they're not able to wrap up and make the tackle, right? Like they overcommit and get juked out, or the guy slips away. And we saw that against Oklahoma with Dylan Gabriel. We saw that this last week with Houston's quarterback. We even saw that a little bit in Alabama. With Milroe. So I think we just our guys need to stay at home. That's a big thing to teach there, and not over commit, when it comes to playing these super athletic quarterbacks. But look, a win's a win. A 7-point win too at that, wasn't as close as the game kind of led on throughout the whole game as you watched it. But win's a win, 5 more left. Hopefully we get it done. And I think coming home is much needed at BYU, a home crowd to give the team some momentum and some juice, and then another home game against Kansas State.
Yeah, 3 sacks is solid, but we could have had more. I think Jalen Ford had a really nice game despite struggling heavily against Oklahoma. He bounced back off a bye week really nicely, so I was pleasantly surprised to see him. Xavier Worthy, you mentioned him and Quinn's connection. I know where it's going to look, the offense, like you said, it's going to look very different next week. But having Xavier Worthy, quietly every game, 90 yards, 90 yards, 90 yards. He's just an uber efficient wide receiver, and he's everything that we've hoped he can be. Still not great in the punt return, freaks me out there, but he's been very strong. Brooks, we got the win. Look, Dana Holgerson's always going to play us tough. He knows from the West Virginia days. He's beaten Texas a few times. He gets it, and that's his Super Bowl. You could see it on his face at the end of the game, how devastated he was when they lost. He really, really desperately wanted that one. And their quarterback, by and large, they didn't really do much in the running game because they were playing from behind. But Donovan Smith had a really strong game. Manjack had some crazy catches without gloves. Golden too. Our coverage could have been a little bit better. And like you said, our pass rush, we could have really wrapped and really, made it a lot tougher for the Houston Cougars to be in this game. It's definitely not the result I thought we were going to get when we were up 21-0. We were talking at the bar. We're like, are we going to see Malik Murphy? Which we did, but it was in the completely different capacity we saw Malik Murphy that we thought we were going to see him. So going forward for us, BYU's not a rollover team. Keaton Slovis, as I know he's been hopping around, not maybe to the tune of JT Daniels, but they're 5-2. He's a very experienced quarterback, and the games they lost at Kansas by 11 and they got smacked by TCU, but they went and they beat Texas Tech last week. They've beaten Cincinnati. They went into Arkansas, and I know they're having a down year, but still not an easy place to play. And they beat the Arkansas Razorbacks. So this BYU team is no joke, and we're vulnerable. This is the ultimate game for the defense to step up and be a top tier defense like we've imagined it to be.
This is the game that I've been circling all season long to watch out for because, as history shows, BYU has given us problems, back in the day with Taysom Hill. So I really hope that this is the game that they take care of business, and just don't leave any doubt that this is a team that truly belongs to be in the college football playoff. I mean, coming off of a close win against Houston, you still move up one in the rankings. Like that's great. I mean, we're number 7 now, but I'm super excited to see Malik. I mean, that's why you go out and get guys like this. Winning programs have stables of arms. Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. I mean, like these teams just have guys that they can turn out. If one guy goes down, next guy comes up. We saw it with Tua Tagovailoa. We saw it in Ohio State when Carl Jones had to win the national championship for them. Like, if you want to be a winning program, you need to have multiple guys that are ready to compete right away, that can get it done, that can win ball games for you. And so the fact that we have this deep quarterback room with Malik, and if Malik goes down, we got Arch Manning. I mean, I wouldn't like to see Arch Manning get rushed into the program. I mean, he is a redshirt freshman right now, but at the end of the day, like having those guys, having that safety blanket is why you recruit these 5-star guys. People always wonder, it's like, why we have so many, guys sitting on the bench. And at the end of the day, this is why. I mean, Quinn has been injured multiple times in his career now. And so we don't know how much longer he's going to be out for, but everything that we saw and indicated in spring, Malik had an amazing spring. Quan said he saw it firsthand. All the writers have been talking about it. Players are behind it. I mean, there's a reason why this guy was a 5-star coming out of high school, and he's an athletic specimen, of course, but I'm excited to see what he can do, because this is a guy that we were talking about potentially being our starting quarterback for next season. So, I mean, no better time to get your reps in, than a pretty manageable Big 12 stretch to end the season and, get into the conference championship and then eventually the college football playoff.
Yeah, I can't say it better myself, honestly. Like, how many times in that Sunday night football game do they show the graphics of Tua and Jalen Hurts being teammates? Jalen comes out, Tua in. Tua goes down, Jalen back in. Tua goes down the next year, like you said, Mac Jones in. And then obviously the Ohio State example was phenomenal. Like, that's why you recruit. That's why you have deep classes. Like, look what Georgia's able to do. Like, Georgia hasn't missed a beat. And got into a bar argument, like what happens if Texas wins out, Washington wins out, Florida State wins out, one of Michigan, Ohio State wins out, and Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship. It's the big debate. Like, does Texas jump them if they went out? They beat Oklahoma again. It's very interesting because Toss actually yesterday we were talking about it. He said, well, they would be undefeated in the regular season, Georgia, and they've got back to back. And the guy at the bar says back to back, but obviously us beating Alabama and Alabama beating them is a huge monkey wrench for that. But, again, they're a wagon and they continuously churn out players and they churn out depth. And that's how these great programs are not just flash in the pans, cool for 1 year. Like, oh, wow, we're in the playoffs. Like, no offense to TCU, but like, do we really anticipate TCU making the playoffs again anytime soon? Because their program's not built that way.
No. That was flash in the pan for sure. But what I'll say, if that were to happen, hypothetically speaking, and Georgia lost to Alabama and we beat OU, I'd have to say that we'd get in because we beat the team that beat us already, right? So there's no other teams that have beat us that really, you can kind of put on like, oh, like that one loss that they suffered against Baylor earlier in the year, like that's the one blemish. The one blemish of the season is a team that we got redemption on. So I think that was my
argument.
That's why
they avenged our loss.
Yeah, exactly. You avenge yourselves and you show that you are the better team in the bigger game, right? For the conference championship, and you are the conference champion, and you got to give love to that. And then the fact that we beat the team that is the SEC champion in Alabama, I think would trump Georgia.
Yeah. I that's my argument was we avenge our loss and we beat the team that beat Georgia. Like, you can't just like you can't be rewarding teams off what they've done in years past.
Yeah. And also, I love rooting for Bama this season because, every loss just makes our win look better. Or sorry, every win that they have makes our win look better. So, I mean, it's fun rooting for Bama.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. Like when Tennessee, and they're not the best Bama team we've ever seen, but they have some really good defensive players. Like Kool-Aid McKintry's really good. Dallas Turner's had a sick season. Like, he's been another guy that's just an absolute monster. and his name is kind of sick. Like, you know, when you see a player with like sick names and you just and they're dirty, it just like heightens it that much more. Like Dallas Turner and Corey McKinstry, like if their names were like not as cool, they wouldn't be as good. It's just like one of those effects. Yeah, I again, like, you know, we just got to continue to take care of business. And BYU, like, they let up 150 rushing yards per game. So look, Jonathan Brooks didn't have the massive game we all thought he was going to have this past weekend in Houston, but he can get right back into the Doak Walker race, you know, leading that if he has another monster game against BYU at home. And I'm hoping that the game plan relies heavily on him, and I anticipate him delivering on that. And if look, best thing that could happen is Jonathan Brooks is running wild. How much easier does that make life on Malik to come in and just relax and do his thing, open it up, hit his receiver? So much less pressure. A couple bigger picture things. Back to the big picture of the sporting world. Nick, your bet of Michael Penix Jr. to win the Heisman. He was the favorite, jumping Caleb Williams up until this week, struggled against Arizona State. JJ McCarthy has now jumped, favoring Michael Penix, who's now plus 275. McCarthy is plus 180. Honestly, my favorite bet right now, or my two favorite bets right now, are sitting pretty. At plus 600, Jaden Daniels, who's been statistically the best player in college football. He's putting up the best numbers for LSU. And LSU has a bye week this week, and then they have Alabama. So if you're looking to make a bet, in my opinion, I would take Jaden Daniels, betting on the fact that he continues to put up the numbers. And like you say, Nick, you know, and when you've spoken to a Heisman voter, they always look to the big game. Does he show up and show out in the big game? And he has a big game coming up in Tuscaloosa. So you're betting on Jaden Daniels coming into Tuscaloosa and throwing up crazy numbers, which if he does, that I think could thrust him. Like, because JJ McCarthy, it's not like JJ McCarthy's passing numbers are that great, and it's not like his running numbers are that great.
Well, yeah, what I was about to say is that they really haven't played anyone that good all season long.
Either,
all their tough games are, you know, towards the end of the season. I mean, you got Penn State and you got Ohio State. I think Washington, I mean, they've played Oregon. That was a great game. That was the first true test for Washington. But then they have, you know, in a couple of weeks, USC, Utah, and Oregon State back to back. So that'll be a true test. I still think that Penix is going to end up running away with it at some point. This was just a fluke of a game, in my opinion, against Arizona State. But with Michigan, you know, I mean, Penn State's defense is no joke. Ohio State's defense is no joke. They really haven't played, you know, any team that has given them a true test. I mean, they've literally not let up more than 10 points to any opponent all season long. Minnesota scored 10 on them, and that's the most that Michigan is allowed. So we'll really just have to see when there's adversity thrown at Michigan how JJ McCarthy plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think I'm with you 100%. I would still think Penix to me is probably like a safe bet, along with my guy Jaden Daniels. But I know Bo Nix lost to Penix, but it really wasn't his fault. It was Dan Lanning's fault, and he goes to Utah, and then they still have the USC Trojans. So he has a few big games late in the season. And if Washington could fall and they don't head to the Pac-12 championship, and it's the Oregon Ducks that represent, and are fighting for, you know, a Pac-12 championship and a playoff spot, I think Bo Nix at plus 1,200 is a pretty sneaky bet. And lastly for the college football talk today, this is something that really frustrated me. Emmanuel Acho, yes, great Texas Longhorn, proud of everything that he does on broadcasts and, you know, and in sports media. It really is disheartening to see a former player come out and be like, Caleb Williams should sit the rest of the season after losing the 2 games. Yes, he's lost back-to-back games. Yes, they're probably not going into the playoffs. And yes, his Heisman odds and chances, even though he's still putting up crazy numbers this season by and large, are in trouble. But they could still compete for a Pac-12 championship. They still have a lot of games left to play. They have to play Washington. They have to play Oregon. They have to play their foe in UCLA, and they could play spoiler to those teams too. You know, I just think it's such a bad mentality and sends such a bad message to the young athletes of the generation. Okay, if things aren't going your way, just take the bag and quit.
I agree with that. And let's just say he tore his ACL. Would he still be the number 1 overall pick in the draft?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was he the best player in college football this year?
I mean, no.
Is he?
Okay. No. But I think when you talk about value, right, and what people see in him and his talent, you know, I mean, he might end up being the best NFL player, and that's in college right now. I mean, it's hard to say. You know, obviously guys bust all the time, but people have come back from injuries so much quicker and so much stronger, you know, in recent years. We see it all the time. And so, not saying that he's going to get injured. Obviously, we'd never hope injury on anyone at all. But if he does get injured, I just don't think it really hurts his stock that much.
No, and they're still fighting for something though.
For real.
And there's still guys on the team that are seniors. Like a lot of these guys, this is their last football game they'll ever play. What kind of message does it send to your teammates? And yes, you still be a top 3-5 pick, first overall pick even. But what kind of messages does it send to the NFL and NFL fan bases, NFL management that you just quit on your team like that? It's kind of blasphemous. It's really terrible and really shaky advice to the youth athletes. I don't think
he's going to sit out. I like sitting out a bowl game is one thing, you know, meaningless bowl game, but like you're still in it for the conference championship. I agree with you. Your teammates, you know, rely on you. Those are guys that you know, share locker room with, share meals with, you know, are with literally 24/7 almost. I'm sure he rooms with some of these guys. Like it's a bad message that you're sending to future teammates, future coaches, organizations, that you're just not fully bought in on the program. It's more about you than anything. So I agree there. And then, you know, I mean, you cover UFC, so you see it. And I don't really think it's going to happen. I think that's just like a comment that was made.
He loves his teams. He loves his teammates. And you know what? These other guys like Taj Washington, who's an upperclassman going to go to the draft, like his stock matters. Like Caleb Williams playing affects other people's draft stock.
It's also development too. Like getting these games in is valuable. You know, like you're playing against top tier guys that are going to end up getting drafted as well. So it's like, why would you take off those reps? You know, it's like the same thing as just like, oh, I'm not going to practice right now. Like you need to get all the reps in that you can before, you know, when you make your debut in the NFL, because odds are if you're going to be the #1 overall pick, you're probably going to be starting. I mean, unless you get drafted by a team that like already has a quarterback, you know, that you can sit behind, which like I don't really see that happening. But yeah, Denver maybe, you know, but like at the end of the day, it's just you need those reps, and there's no better reps you're going to get than playing against top tier teams, you know, vying for a conference championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. And Mike Gill, who I retweeted the Emmanuel Acho thing from, one of his big points is like playing time is still so valuable for this kid. It's not like, look, if Caleb Williams in the last 3 games, 2 of them being losses, had he been tearing it up and the defense just fallen flat and like, you know, been sus and they blown it, I'd be like, okay, like I could somewhat see where you're coming from, where this kid's leaving it all out of the field and absolutely killing it. He threw 3 interceptions last game, wasn't good the week before, right? Against Arizona State, he struggled. And then he had a really he was okay against, you know, against like a good youth defense, but he was just okay. So he wasn't anything special or exceptional there. To me, you know, he still needs more time and more seasoning, because Marvin Harrison Jr. has proven to be the best player in the nation. Like he's probably the best prospect right now overall, regardless of position. So if you're not the best or the best player, then you got to keep playing. Like Trevor Lawrence was the first overall pick, but he was the best player and the best prospect. Ditto with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was by far, like he left no doubt. Like Herbert and Tua were great prospects, but he was the best prospect and best player. Like you have to be both, you know, to really leave no doubt. And Caleb Williams hasn't done that this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you.
Cool. Horns up. We'll get more of a prediction, more of a preview versus BYU in the Houston game again. You know, Ford really strong, Worthy strong. I'll quickly throw out some offensive linemen, how they played, because we don't really get to see statistical stuff, but it's always fun and always nice to see how they did on PFF. Running the ball, Banks, Connor, Majors, Campbell, all 80 grades, dude. All 80. Oh, sorry, in pass block, all 80 grades. You love to see that. Run block, they had a bit of a tougher time. Banks and Jones were the highest graded guys, but they were both in the 60s. So I would have loved to see them have a bigger game. Yeah, I mean, Brooks really strong. Red. I like our packages with Red. I would love to see him out a bit more. And Baxter, I thought, showed some nice flashes.
Yeah, Savion Red, he's been great. I mean, I love the Wildcat package. I'd like to see more of that, honestly, not just only in, high leverage 4th and 1 situations. Like if we're down there in the goal line, or, even if they're just like, we need to run some clock. Like I like the idea of having them out there, especially giving, at the time Quinn Ewers some time off, but yeah, I mean, if you have an effective run game in college football, I mean, since there's always a running clock, like you can just dominate a game. So the more ways that you can show that you can run the ball, not just with your running backs, but in different packages and in different formations, the more dangerous you are as a team, because teams have a hard time game planning that.
Yeah, and the last couple of things I'll say is we have to be better on 3rd down. 3 of 12 is unacceptable. Unacceptable, especially against a susceptible Houston team. And the penalties is ridiculous. You mean to tell me they had 1 penalty, and that penalty came with like how much time left in the game?
4th quarter.
Not a single, no holding penalties at all. Not a single holding penalty barely called on us all year on either side of the ball. It's ridiculous.
Could be that Big 12 send off that we were looking for from these referees.
It's absurd. It's absurd. It's absurd. But yeah, good win. Way to come out there unscathed. And I think, going forward, like we just have to see what we have with Malik. We'll have a really better assessment and a better preview coming up for the BYU game, which you've had circled on your calendar. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
One thing I will just say to close this out, in terms of the Big 12, one thing I will say to close this out in terms of the Big 12, the send off, the referees, the commissioner, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Yeah, I agree. And they are crying right now.
They're crying a lot.
They are crybaby city right now. All right, well, let's go get a win at BYU. Good win against Houston, even though it wasn't pretty at times. You closed when you were supposed to close, which is what we love about this team. You don't let them back in, which easily could have happened. And it was a better showing than OU had at home against UCF. So that's also always nice to see. Fisher, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. We'll have Quan and Alex Tossman Rocketopoulos next time on the show. Get your horns up, hit your free throws. We love you.